I'm a financial planner and I've been in the industry for a long time and talked with hundreds and hundreds of people about their personal finances. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, as they get older, they start to regret some of the financial and retirement decisions they made when they were a little bit younger. So in today's video, what we're going to do is summarize 7 of the most common retirement regrets that I've come across in my career in the industry. These are the most common regrets that come up as we enter the later stages of our lives. And with any luck, if we cover the top 7 that I've run across, hopefully you can avoid making these mistakes yourself. The first retirement regret we'll cover in today's video is not having saved enough early on, not having saved at an earlier age, not having saved more when they were younger. And the thing about personal finance is that there's always this concept of delayed gratification, to where we can make decisions that benefit either current you or future you. And an example of that is you could decide to buy groceries and cook dinner at home every single night this week. Or you could decide to eat out every night this week. And if you ate out, that means that you don't have to do the work of going to the grocery store, you don't have to cook the food, you don't have to do the dishes, but it's more expensive, right? So this concept of delayed gratification is, if you go to the effort now to cook dinner at home, future you is going to be in a better place financially. And this shows up a lot when we think about long-term savings and investing. And a lot of people that we've spoken with who get into their 70s, their 80s, their 90s, there's stuff that they want to do, there's stuff that they need to do, but they simply can't because they don't have enough wiggle room in their finances, in their retirement plan. Had they saved more at an earlier age, they would have more options when they get into the middle and later stages of their retirement. So this happens to a lot of people out there. You've all seen the chart of exponential compound growth, which means that if you invest $1,000 on day one, and in the first year that $1,000 earns 5%, at the end of year one, you have $1,050, right? Well, then in year two, if you earn another 5%, that means that your initial $1,000 investment earns 50 bucks, but the 50 bucks that you earned in year one earns its own 5% as well. And so the earlier we invest, the longer that we invest and allow our savings to grow for, the better off we'll be. You've all seen that chart of exponential growth. That's what compound interest is. That's why Warren Buffett calls it the eighth wonder of the world. The earlier we start, the better off we'll be and the more options we'll have down the road. And again, the way that people are phrasing this particular retirement regret is they wish they had the fortitude to delay gratification at an earlier age to put their future selves in a better spot. The second retirement regret we'll cover today is not having a purpose beyond work. You've heard this before, I'm sure. What we don't want to do is step away from the job, step into retirement, and just walk right into some void where you don't know how you're going to fill the weeks. It sounds great to have all this extra time on your hands, but it's unstructured. You don't have any challenge. There's nothing of substance to retire into. What you need to do is set up some of those structures before you quit the job, right? And that might mean working on your social circles, your social activities and interactions outside of the office before you quit the job. It might mean drumming up some volunteer work before you stop working so that you have those relationships intact once you stop working and are trying to figure out what to fill your work week with. The point is that we all need purpose, we all need challenge, and for very many people, they solely found that through their work and their careers. And once that's gone, they're starting with an absolutely clean slate and it's fresh and it's scary and it can be very, very depressing. So start that process of structuring your weeks and figuring out what you're going to fill the void with and have that intact before you quit the job and actually step into retirement. Because that's a huge regret that has caused a lot of depression and anguish around the country, certainly with a lot of the people that we've spoken with. The third regret we'll cover today that a lot of people have in retirement is carrying debt into retirement after they quit their jobs. I'm not someone who thinks that everybody has to have every penny of debt paid off, including your mortgage, before you give up your job. But I do think you need most of it paid off, and definitely high interest debt needs to be zeroed out and completely paid off before you quit your job. And the reason, even if you can make the math make sense and work for your financial and retirement plan, the reason is largely psychological. Because if you give up that income, right, when we step into retirement, you should be financially independent. You're giving up your income from work and you're relying on a mix of guaranteed income from Social Security, maybe a pension or some kind of annuity income, and your nest egg, your savings to last you the rest of your life. And if you make that transition, it's very hard psychologically if you have the weight of debt hanging over your shoulders. So if you have a lot of auto loans, maybe a HELOC or home equity loan, or credit card debt or anything like that, that is very, very hard to give up your income and then be okay with throughout retirement. Because as soon as we give up when we're in our working years, when we're in the middle of our career, we have control over that career. We can always work another year or two if we really need to in order to make the retirement plan work. But guess what? When you give up the work and step into retirement, there are a ton of unknowns already. We don't know how long we're going to live. We don't know what our medical expenses are going to be. We don't know what our family needs are. We don't know what inflation is going to look like or what the market is going to do. That's a pretty scary time. And if you have the weight of debt hanging over your shoulders on top of that, what happens when the economy starts to falter, the market crashes, which it definitely will a couple of times throughout your retirement? That makes it very, very hard to manage and can lead down somewhat dangerous paths. So before you make your retirement transition, again, I don't think you need every penny of debt paid off, particularly if you have a mortgage at a very, very low rate of interest, like 3, even 4% or so. But any high interest debt definitely needs to be paid off, because that's a huge regret people have once they get into their 70s and 80s. The next regret a lot of people have as they get into their elderly years is filing for their Social Security benefits too early. As you know, your Social Security benefits are based on your earnings record. You get 100% of what's called your primary insurance amount if you file exactly at your full retirement age. Every month before your full retirement age that you file, your benefits every single month will go down for the rest of your life. You can wait until after your full retirement age and defer all the way up until age 70. And for every year that you defer, your benefit goes up by 8%. Now, the main counter argument to this that I keep hearing over and over and over again is that, well, isn't the Social Security trust fund running out of money? Why shouldn't I file now as early as I can and collect what I can before the fund runs out of money? The answer is yes, we are running out of money, but that doesn't mean that the program is going to go away, or that your benefits, when it does go to zero, are going to be impacted at all. Because at that time, there's still going to be a lot of money coming into the trust every single year from tax receipts at that time. Now, this is a topic for another day, but the point is that a lot of people, as they get older, realize that they actually need more guaranteed income than they thought for a variety of reasons. And they wished, back to our delayed gratification that we talked about a minute ago, they wish they would have been able to delay gratification in their early 60s and wait to file for Social Security until a later age, because by doing so, that gives them more guaranteed income for the rest of their lives. And that's exceptionally helpful for a lot of people that get into their 80s and 90s. Number 5 on our list today is ignoring tax planning. Tax planning is really important as you approach your own retirement, because the vast majority of us in the US today are using tax deferred accounts like IRAs, like 401ks, 403bs, things like that, to save for our retirement and build our nest egg. Those are great accounts. They have wonderful tax benefits because you don't pay income tax on what you put into them at first. But guess what? You do have to pay income tax on every penny that comes out of it when you use the money in retirement. And because you've deferred taxation for so long, the IRS is waiting around to tax you on that money, and you can't keep it in there forever. And you can probably tell what I'm getting at is that's why we have mandatory distributions, required minimum distributions when you get into your 70s. And when if you're turning 73 sometime soon, you'll need to start at 73. If you're a little younger, your start date won't be until 75. But when you hit that point, you'll have to take in year one a little bit out of the account, and then in year two a little bit more. And every year that you go on and get older, you're required to take out a larger and larger portion of the account, and it's all taxable income. Now, this is important because we have a progressive tax system, and the more income that we have, the more money we make, the higher the rate of tax we pay on it, right? So what happens is as we get older, we have to take more and more and more money out of our IRAs and 401ks. And if you ignore tax planning, it's not uncommon, it's not unlikely that those minimum distributions might push you into a much higher tax bracket when you get into your 70s and 80s yourself. So the point is, please, please, please pay attention to tax planning, not just on a year-to-year basis while you're in your 50s and 60s preparing for your retirement, but on a multi-decade basis, because a lot of people regret not having done that when they find themselves pushed into a higher tax bracket as a result of these required minimum distributions. So don't ignore the tax planning. A lot of people regret not having done that earlier. Next up on our list today is not having downsized or relocated in time or soon enough or at an earlier age. And if you're someone out there who lives in a 3-story house, you know definitively you're going to slow down at some point, and you might reach the point where you don't want to lug laundry up 2 flights of stairs. That happens to everybody as we slow down. And so identifying where you want to age before you actually need to make the move is vitally important, because it's a big deal moving. It's a big deal picking up and moving all your belongings, selling your house, downsizing, whatever that looks like for you as part of your plan. That's a big deal. And what we don't want to do is wait until it's too late and wait until we absolutely have to make that change. Right? We want to be proactive. And this is a big regret people have, is they didn't do enough proactive planning. They didn't think about it in advance. And now all of a sudden, holy smokes, I really can't get up and down the stairs anymore. We need to move. At that point, you have fewer options than you would have a few years prior if you'd been a little bit more proactive. So this is a regret that a lot of people have. Just think about what the years are going to look like, what your life is going to look like as you slow down and start to lose mobility in your 80s and 90s, as happens to everybody who lives that long. So just be forward thinking here. Try to visualize where you want to age, what environment you want to be in, and make those moves before you're forced to, because if you wait, you'll just have fewer options available. The seventh and final regret we will cover today is waiting too long to enjoy retirement. I want to put this idea in your head. When we're working, we're taking money in from work, we have cash hitting our checking account every single month. And then we use that to pay taxes and pay all our expenses. And hopefully, if we're living within our means, we have at least a little bit left over at the end of every month. That little bit adds to your nest egg every month. Even if you just leave it in the checking or savings account, it adds to your net worth. And when we're in that position, it's easy to spend a little bit more on vacation because you have control over how long you're going to work, and you're taking in more than is going out. It is a major psychological shift to transition into retirement and give up the income. Because if you're like 95% of Americans, at that point, you'll have less coming in every single month than you have going out, right? If you're somebody that doesn't have a pension, Social Security is probably not going to cover all of your living expenses, which means that you need to take money out of the nest egg every single month in order to pay the bills. And I've seen this happen dozens of times. Remember, there's a lot of unknowns when we step into retirement. We don't know how long we'll live. We don't know what the market's going to do. We don't know what the tax code will be. We don't know what our medical and other costs might be a couple decades down the road. And a lot of times what happens to people is they turn into Captain Coupon immediately after giving up their income. And I get the sentiment, but we need to battle against that, because we will slow down eventually after we retire. And if you have a bucket list and things that you want to do, a lot of financial professionals will use the go-go years of retirement. That's when that's right after you stop working, when you have energy and time and resources. And then the next phase are the slow go years where you start to slow down. And then finally, at the end of our lives, we have the no go years at all. The point is that you have a limited window of a time period when you have enough energy to do the stuff that you want to do. And even though it's scary, and even though we don't know what the future holds and whether the pile will be big enough to last us the rest of our lives sometimes, it's still important to do those bucket list things because you might not have the opportunity from a health or a mobility perspective a couple decades down the road. And a lot of people regret not having enjoyed their retirement earlier because now they're starting to slow down and they didn't get to everything that they wanted to do. So don't make that mistake yourself. All right, that's it for today's video. I hope you found it helpful. Every single one of these 7 regrets that we talked about, I've heard dozens of times over the years from people who have already made their retirement transition. Some of them may not be that far into their retirement, late 60s, early 70s, but at that point, some of them already have regrets. Some of which, these 7 that we talked about today. So this stuff happens. We've heard it a lot. The best way to combat against these regrets, make sure that you don't have them when you get that old, is to simply plan proactively before you give up your income and step into retirement. A lot of these things can really be mitigated by sound and thorough planning. That's it for today, and I hope you enjoyed it.